I'm Sam from GForce and this is the Oberheim TVS Pro. In this video, I'll walk you through every aspect of the synthesizer so that you can master it for use in your own productions. We've worked closely with Oberheim to provide the definitive software version of the two-voice system, originally released in 1975. We've got a host of expansions to each SEM module, dual sequencers, a range of effects, and a number of keyboard modes which allow you to get the most out of this unique dual SEM setup. At the core of TVS Pro are the two SEMs, or synthesizer expander modules. Each of these has been faithfully recreated from their original design with a host of augmentations. You can flip the SEM panel by clicking in the bottom right-hand corner and see a wide range of extra controls. Each SEM can be set up and controlled individually or grouped and offset to allow quick and easy editing. On the far left we have the output mixer. Here you can set the level and panning for each SEM. There's also a solo switch for each. To the right of that, we have the sequencer panel. Sequencers have lanes for gate, velocity, ratchet and panning, and you can edit either sequence A or sequence B using the edit switch in the top right hand corner of the panel. On the far right we have our three effects, a phaser, a delay and a reverb. These can be assigned to either or both SEMs. If you click the icon in the top right hand corner or the switch to the right of the TVS Pro logo, you'll switch to the sequencer/effects panel. Here you can see all of your sequencer controls at once and an expanded range of controls for the three effects. To the left of the keyboard, we have our controls section containing portamento, vibrato, tuning, and vintage controls. The mode screen is the key to understanding how TVS works. Here you can select from 17 different configurations of sequencers and SEMs, allowing you to create a wide range of sounds with just a few clicks. The relationship between the SEMs, the sequencers and keyboard input is the key to making the most of the dual SEM setup. We have our usual range of global controls, including master tuning and the loading and saving of CC presets, along with full undo and redo. In the header, we have access to our patch browser, quick patch swapping, saving of patches, and the settings menu. When you first open up TVS Pro, you'll be greeted with this preset, Thunder Mountain. Let's initialize TVS Pro and build a sound from scratch. TVS Pro features two identically featured SEMs. Let's have a look at their controls now. On the front panel, we have two VCOs. Each has frequency control with fine-tuner mount in the middle of the knob. Modulation destination of either frequency or pulse width. Modulation source, and a manual pulse width control. We set each oscillator's waveform and volume using the knobs at the bottom of the VCF section. You can choose between saw and pulse for VCO 1 and 2, or between the waveform and noise for VCO 3, which is located on the rear panel. The modulation sources for VCO 1 are envelope 1 at the bottom of the panel, VCO 3 and LFO 1. The modulation sources for VCO 2 are envelope 2, VCO 3 and LFO 1. There's also a sync switch allowing you to sync VCOs 1 and 2. The VCF panel contains controls for frequency and resonance. There's a modulation amount with selectable sources. These are envelope 2, VCO3 and LFO1. And there's also the sweepable filter type between low pass, notch, and high pass. There's a switch to turn the filter into a bandpass mode. With that enabled, the filter mode knob and any modulation applied to it has no effect. At the bottom of the panel, you have two controls for the LFO rate and whether that LFO is synced. We also have two ADS envelopes. Envelope 1 is hard assigned to the VCA. Decay and release times are linked, so turning up the decay on an envelope will add a release stage as well. Flipping the SEM panel to the rear view, we can see a large number of additional controls. Firstly, we have VCO3. This has controls for its frequency, its wave shape, with choices between saw, sine, and a square. Below this, we have a mod source switch. This determines what is sent to the modulation destinations on the front panel. This is selectable between the wave shape and pink noise. The envelope mod source switch below allows you to determine whether this modulation source is affected by envelopes 1, 2, or neither. The LFO rate switch below allows you to use VCO3 as the second LFO. Flicking it to on will lower the frequency of the oscillator. Flicking it to sync, the LFO becomes synchronized with the tempo of your host, with a range of rates between 16 beats and 1/32 of a beat. When VCO3 is being used as an LFO, you can make use of the retrigger and intro controls. Intro fades in the VCO over time, allowing you to gradually increase the strength of the LFO, while retrigger resets the phase of the LFO shape every time a key is pressed. In the LFO1 section, you have controls for the wave, retrigger, and intro. We've expanded the range of waveforms to include triangle, sine, ramp, half square, and square, along with a noise source. Intro and retrigger work in the same way as they do on VCO3. In the intro determines the time it takes for your LFO to reach full strength, and retrigger sets whether the phase of the LFO shape is reset every time a key is pressed. The velocity control section allows us to assign velocity to a wide range of destinations. Outside of expansive sound design possibilities, velocity has its own lane in each sequencer, allowing you to create sequencer-related changes to your sound. Each velocity amount is bipolar. You can send velocity to the cutoff, the filter mode, the filter resonance, modulation of oscillator 1, modulation of oscillator 2, the attack time of envelopes 1 and envelope 2, the output amplitude of the SEM, and each of the VCO wave shapes. It's an incredibly powerful panel, whether using sequenced or played material. Below this we have aftertouch assignment. You can assign a bipolar aftertouch amount to 5 different destinations. Those are the filter cutoff, the amplitude of the SEM, modulation 1 amount, modulation 2 amount, and LFO1 rate. In the bottom right hand corner, we have 4 buttons for controlling the settings of our SEMs. Here we can either save the current SEM settings for use in another patch, load up existing SEM settings for use in this patch, or copy and paste between our 2 SEMs. Let's load up a preset in SEM 2. In the top right hand corner of the SEM, we have a padlock. Clicking this will lock the settings of that SEM, even when a patch is changed. In between the 2 SEMs, we have 2 buttons that allow quick and easy editing of both SEMs at once, group and offset. With group enabled, editing a control on one SEM will snap the corresponding control on the other SEM to the same value. With offset enabled, this snapping doesn't occur, and both controls are edited while maintaining their offset amounts. With our SEMs set up as desired, we can now use the mixer to balance them. We've got controls for the level of each and for the panning of each SEM. There's also a solo, which is useful for editing. I find that the best way to work on the SEMs is to set the mode to unison and then solo the SEM I want to edit. Before we begin working with the sequencer, we'll have to use the keyboard mode screen to select a mode that features sequencer control. So let's have a look at the mode screen now. It features a couple of different controls. We have a lock to lock our keyboard mode when changing patches, and a legato switch to determine whether legato envelope triggering is enabled in that mode. You can select your mode by either clicking the two arrows to cycle through or clicking anywhere on the screen to bring up the pop-up menu which shows all 17 modes. These are categorized by key mode, sequencer modes and mixed modes. By default, SEM1 priority is enabled, but let's go through each of the modes now, starting with mono SEM1. In mono SEM1 mode, you'll only hear SEM1 as that is the only module with keyboard control. No other control is enabled. In mono SEM2, the same applies, but only SEM2 is controlled. In unison mode, both SEMs will be triggered by the keyboard. In split mode, a keyboard split control appears on screen, allowing you to set a split point. SEM1 is controlled by any notes below the split point, while SEM2 is controlled by any notes above the split point. In continuous mode, each SEM is triggered alternately with each key press. In SEM1 priority mode, a key press will trigger SEM1, and SEM2 will only trigger when SEM1 is in use. Note stealing will occur from the second note. This mode is great for playing long bass notes on the first SEM and shorter lead lines while the bass note is held on the second. Priority SEM2 inverts this action. Let's move on to the sequencer modes. Each sequencer mode has a corresponding no trigger variant. What this means is that the sequencer will ignore whether the input is set to key and latch within the plugin and instead run based on the state of the master clock from the host. If you're running in standalone mode, this means the sequence will start automatically and run continuously. Whereas if you're using TVS Pro as a plugin, the sequencer will start and stop depending on whether your host clock is running or not. The step that sequence starts at is also determined by the position of the host transport. No trigger modes ignore the keyboard completely, meaning that the sequence is not transposed while playing the keys. The first sequencer mode is a mono sequence, in which sequence A controls SEM1. In dual sequencer mode, sequence A controls SEM1 and sequence B controls SEM2. In the standard mode, a keyboard split determines which keys trigger which sequence. Below the keyboard split, you'll trigger sequence A and therefore SEM1, and above the keyboard split, you'll trigger sequence B and therefore SEM2. In unison sequencer mode, a single sequence, that being sequence A, controls both SEMs. Mixed modes contain, unsurprisingly, a mixture of sequenced and SEM modes. First of these is sequenced and SEM split, which provides a keyboard split. Below the keyboard split, you'll be playing sequence A and triggering SEM 1. Above the keyboard split, you'll be playing SEM 2 as a monophonic synth as normal. SEM and sequence split changes the position of sequencer A. It's now above the keyboard split and controlling SEM 2. SEM and free sequence mode decouples the sequencer from the keyboard, allowing you to play SEM 1 all the way up and down the keyboard, while sequencer A controls SEM 2 in no trigger mode. The final mode is single trig, SEM and sequence. In this mode, the keyboard controls SEM 1 directly and also sequence A, which is controlling SEM 2. With our keyboard mode in place, we can begin to look at the sequencer. On the main panel, we have the mini sequencer. Here you can do most of your editing, but you're limited to viewing one lane of one sequence at a time. This is great for making small adjustments while editing the SEMs. However, if we click on the icon in the top right of the header or the sequencer/effects panel switch just above the keyboard mode screen, we switch to the full sequencer view. Here we're able to view all sequencer parameters simultaneously and perform more advanced functions such as loading and saving of sequences, randomization of sequencer lanes, and drag and drop MIDI export. To the left of the sequencers, we have the global controls. This starts with the input switch at the top, which can be set between key and latch modes. When key is selected, the sequence will only play whilst a key is being held. In latch mode, the sequence will continue to play at the last pitch received from the keyboard. We then have the three edit buttons. A to B copies sequence A to sequence B. Swap swaps sequence A and B. And B to A copies sequence B onto sequence A. Below this, we have a copy of the output mixer for quick access. Both sequence A and sequence B contain the following controls. Firstly, we have a padlock next to the title. This allows us to lock our sequence and keep it, even if we change patches. Underneath this, we have an initialize button, which allows us to reset the sequence to its default state. Next, we have a record button, which allows us to play in the notes of the sequence. Let's try that now. Below the record button, we have a number of sequencer preset controls. We can browse through sequencer presets by pressing previous or next. We can load a specific sequence by pressing the load button, and we can save our sequence to a sequence preset by clicking the save button. To the right of the save button, we have the MIDI button. Here you can click and drag to create a MIDI file that contains the sequence data. You can then either place this in your host or save it somewhere on your computer. Each sequence contains 5 lanes. They are, from top to bottom, the pitch, the gate length, the velocity, a ratchet amount, which determines the number of triggers within a step, and the pan. Each sequence can be a maximum of 16 steps in length. At the end of each sequencer lane, there are 2 controls for randomization. There's a button which randomizes the values within the lane and a range which determines the range of random values that can be picked from. To the right of this, there's a reset for each lane, allowing you to take it back to its initialized state without initializing the whole sequence. On the right-hand side of each sequencer panel, there's controls for the setting of the sequencer. Here you can nudge your sequence left or right by one step at a time. You can set the number of steps that the sequence is. You can set the playback rate of the sequence. And you can choose the scale to quantize the pitch values to. You can select a note and then select its major, harmonic, melodic, or natural scale. You can also set the octave range that the sequence will transpose over, its playback mode, with the options being forwards, backwards, forwards, backwards, or random, and the amount of swing applied to the sequence. This suite of tools allows you to quickly create complex sequences and effortlessly explore variations of them. Let's take a look at the keyboard control section to the left of the keyboard itself. Firstly, we have portamento. You can set individual rates for SEM1 and SEM2, and then an offset for VCO2 for each of your SEMs. Let's do this on SEM2 now. Below the portamento, we have vibrato. We have controls for the rate and the amount and where that vibrato is applied. We can apply it to both SEMs, SEM1 or SEM2. Let's apply it to just SEM2. Below the keyboard mode screen, we have a range of controls related to the pitch. We have individual detune of SEM1 and SEM2, octave transpose of SEM1 and SEM2, and a bend range for the keyboard pitch bend control, with a lock so that this is maintained when changing patches. We also have a vintage knob. The vintage knob parameter was developed in conjunction with Tom Oberheim and Marcus Ryle and decalibrates a raft of parameters to create predictable and consistent differences between each SEM. This emulates the behaviour of a hardware TVS Pro, where calibration differences exist between each SEM. It's a simple way to add vintage flavour to any of your sounds. With our patch feeling pretty complete, let's take a look at the effects. We'll stay in the sequencer view as that has all controls for the effects, with only limited controls available on the front panel. At the top of the effects section, we have a global bypass, allowing us to bypass all of the effects with a single click. Below that, we have each effect itself, the phaser, delay, and reverb. Each of these effects features a padlock, which allows you to lock that effect even when changing patches, and two routing buttons, which allow the signal to be routed in from either SEM1, SEM2, or both SEMs. The phaser features controls for rate, depth, and mix, as well as allowing you to set the number of stages, being able to choose between 6 and 12. There's also a sync button for the rate, syncing the parameter to the host clock. Let's apply some phaser to SEM2. Looking at the delay, on the right hand side we have the main controls, those being left and right time, which can be operated independently or linked using the icon between the two knobs, the feedback amount, and the mix. There's a high pass filter which can be applied to the feedback, and modulation depth and modulation rate controls. There's a crossfeed setting and a sync. The sync applies to the left and right time parameters. Let's apply some delay to SEM 1. Our third effect is the reverb, which features controls for size, decay, pre-delay, filtering, and the mix. There's also mod depth and mod rate controls, along with preset selector. There are 5 presets available, those being slapback, small, medium, large, and huge. With an appropriate reverb applied to SEM 2, let's take a look at the patch browser. We'll start by saving our patch. We do this by clicking the save icon in the header bar. The save dialog appears and we can begin to categorize and tag our patch. First we choose a collection. I'm going to select user. Then we choose a category. In this one we're using a sequence and a lead, so we select that. Now we move on to the types, and there's a wide range available. I'm going to choose chord, dynamic, and long release. Next we move on to our timbre tags. Here I'll choose bright, detuned, and resonant. If we wish, we can add collections or categories, type, or timbre tags by clicking in the dialog box at the bottom of the list, typing what we want, and then clicking the plus. As this patch has quite a lot of reverb, I'm going to add a tag to reflect that. Now we can begin filling in the metadata. First we name our patch, then we give it an author, and then, if we want, we can add some notes on the patch. Once all that's done, we can click Save, and our patch is added to the user collection. Let's take a look at the functions of the browser. We'll start by loading an init patch. We can get to the browser by either clicking on the patch name in the header bar or the browser icon to the left of the patch bar. Once the patch browser is open, in the bottom left-hand corner you'll see the init patch button. Let's click on that and an initialized patch is loaded. Let's load a random preset to get some inspiration. We return to the browser, and in the bottom right-hand corner, you can see a random button. Clicking on that will load a patch at random from your collection. As I browse through the presets, I can add them to my favourites list by clicking the heart icon next to the name. Let's have a look at the sorting options now. Just above the list of presets on the right-hand side, you'll see the sorting icon. Clicking on this gives us a number of different ways to sort our patches. We can sort by favourites, alphabetically, reverse alphabetically, and by alpha patches. Sorting by alpha patches first is the default. Tags are incredibly useful for honing in on the kind of sound that you want. There are 3 columns of them. Category, which gives you a broader overview of the patch that you're looking for. Types, which define the function of the patch. And timbres, which define its character. I can select multiple tags to further filter my selection by Command or Control plus a click. Types and timbres have OR and visibility states. For example, selecting both the dynamic and evolving tags with the OR flag on will show all patches that contain either dynamic or evolving tags. Changing that to AND will only show patches that contain the dynamic and evolving tags. Using the search bar above the list of patches allows us to filter our sounds in another way. We can search for patch name, we can search by patch author, and we can look for keywords in patch notes. There's also an audition function down at the bottom of the browser window, and we can audition patches directly as we browse through them. We also have the program change function in the very bottom right of the browser window. This allows you to set a list of patches that will be recorded by MIDI program change messages. Let's take a look at collections. You can create a new collection at the point of saving any patch. You simply define the collection in the left-hand column by either selecting an existing one or typing it into the box at the bottom and pressing the plus icon. Collections are managed by clicking the folder icon at the top of the collection column. Here you can import, export, and delete collections. Let's try importing one now. We click on the import button, browse to where that collection is on our computer, and we'll see a pop-up showing the number of patches imported. That collection now appears in the left-hand column of the browser. Let's take a look at the settings screen. If you're in standalone mode, you'll see the audio and MIDI settings. Here you can set your audio output and your MIDI input devices. Below we have a number of instrument settings that are available in both standalone and plug-in mode. Firstly, we have Allow Tail Off on Host Transport Stop. With this on, envelope release tails will continue after you press stop in your host. With this off, envelope release tails will stop when your host stops. Next is the patch browser font scale, which, unsurprisingly, allows you to set the scale of the font in the browser. Tooltip timeout length allows you to set the tooltip timeout length in seconds. Let's have a look at the CC mapping features of TVS Pro. To assign CC, we click on the little CC icon on the right-hand side of the footer bar. This will show us the CC mapping overlay. Here we can click on any parameter that is CC mappable and simply turn the relevant control on our MIDI controller or send the relevant CC from our host. CC mappings are saved automatically, but if you'd like to save a CC preset, you simply click on the save icon in the footer. You can also load CC presets here and clear any mapping that has already been applied. We click the CC icon again to exit the mode. TVS Pro also features full undo and redo. You can perform these actions by clicking the two icons in the bottom right-hand corner of the footer bar. Undo is on the left and redo is on the right. With this, we've covered pretty much everything that TVS Pro has to offer. There's still a lot to explore, and we can't wait to hear what you do with it. As always, thanks so much for your support, and we hope that you enjoy the TVS Pro as much as we do.